Hello and welcome to today's episode of Mano at the Table. Our background is a little bit different today. We're recording from home after at the blizzard of 26 in downtown Boston here. And today's guest is Katie Boyle, and she's an Irish comedian living in New York City, where she performs regularly at the New York Comedy Club and many more venues. She also hosts a podcast called The Shift, where she and her guests discuss sex and dating from an Irish perspective. And we're going to hear all about that in a little bit. And she's originally from County Kildare, Ireland. Welcome, Katie.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're thrilled, and I'm sure it's going to be lots of laughs today, so I'm very excited after the snow. How did you make out in New York City with the snow?
It was okay, but I did wake up at 4 a.m. There was like a huge crash against the side of my building, but a big huge tree had fallen into the back garden and crashed against the wall. Yeah, so I was lucky it didn't come through the window,
Right.
But it didn't, and so no one was hurt because it was 4 a.m. But it was crazy.
Yeah, wild. I mean, I've never seen so much snow here in Boston.
Yeah.
My goodness, yeah. But I suppose it's winter, right? That's what they tell us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Katie, we're so excited to have you today and to hear all about your journey and all about being an Irish comedian living in New York and indeed, going through the US on tour. So I mentioned in my intro that you grew up in County Kildare, Ireland. Do you want to, for our viewers, do you want to talk a little bit, and our listeners, a little bit about, growing up in Kildare and then kind of how you ended up in New York City?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Leaslip, which is kind of on the border of Kildare and Dublin. But yeah, it's just kind of a small town. I always thought I would be an artist, like a visual artist. Whether you call comedy an art is a question I'll leave up to an answer. I'll leave someone else to answer that. But yeah, so just grew up there. It was kind of a crazy town. It was like all these families moved into Leasup because of Intel. So then all these kids grew up together at the same time, and it was the most teenagers, I'd say, in like the one spot, and we didn't have a Garda station. So it was kind of the craziest. It was like Irish Skins. So my teenage years there was like really, really mental. And then I went to got into art college, went to New York on that. And then in the art venue I was working, I just didn't really I don't know, it was just like a different world to me than what I experienced in the art world in Ireland. I don't think it's as elitist in Ireland. I think it's more like a bit of crack, a bit more like Irish people don't take themselves so seriously, so we don't even with art, do you know the sort of way? When I was interning here, it was unpaid, 50 hours a week. All of the other people who got the internship were from rich families, and their wealth is more than all of Ireland. Do you know that sort of way? Like, it's just you don't meet people like that. So then there was a comedy club across the street, started going to the comedy club, loved it. And then that was that. That was over 10 years ago. So that's kind of it. But yeah, Leaslip, for any of the Americans listening, Kildare is where St. Bridget is from, or Bridget.
Right.
So, but yeah, other than that, I don't really have much on Leaslip other than it was a lot of crazy teenagers.
Right. And then as a kid, growing up, were you a funny child?
Yeah, I was mental. So wired, it was told I had ADHD in like a kind of casual, no one really followed up on it. I remember the teacher writing home that it was the first time she ever had to write a note home about a girl distracting the class, so and then I got kicked out of ballet. I only went to ballet class because I had like a dodgy leg. I was born with one foot turned in, and I think that was like cheaper than surgery. So they started me in ballet when I was young. But then when I was like 7, I got kicked out because I would chase all the girls because I was so hyper. So I was really, really hyper. And then I would drink a lot in my teens. Like, I think we drank, I don't know. I think in Leaslip it was a bit more like, I know teenagers drink a lot anyway, but I don't know. When I talk to my friends now, like, they're like, no, that was crazy. And then moving to America was great because here they're like, if you have more than 4 drinks, they're like, oh, you have a problem. And you're like, oh my God, okay, I need to reevaluate my life, go to therapy, focus on, because I think ADHD, or when you have anything at home, everybody has something. Everybody's a bit wired in different ways.
Right.
But when you come to America, they're like, No, you can like work on yourself and you can like, you can find solutions to make your life easier. Whereas at home you're like, oh, I'll just shove it down and you don't really get the help you need. So that was great. And
Yeah.
comedy helped with that too.
Oh,
So
good.
wait, what was your question again? Sorry.
Oh, I was asking you, were you,
Oh yeah.
were you a
So
funny child? So I guess you were high energy, I suppose. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Funny for other people, I'm
But for,
sure.
and I suppose too, you talk about, being in the US and then Ireland. Yes, I mean, everyone talks, I suppose, talks about their problems here and has a therapist. Where although Ireland is getting better now. I mean, but it was,
It is, yeah.
and I'm older than you, but it was very much the culture that you didn't kind of talk about your problems, or I suppose, or air your dirty laundry in public.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
Gen Z is changing a lot of that, which
yeah,
is great.
which,
And
yeah,
they're very self-confident and like
mm,
okay with being like, yeah, I look good, which like, oh my God, if you said that when I was growing up, which I think is great. And I think there's a lot, like America gets a really bad reputation for different reasons and Americans get slagged off at home for being loud and this and that. But I love that they don't care what people think about themselves. They don't, do you know what I mean? I love that they have a bit of self-confidence
mm,
and I think they can learn things from us. I think we're less individualist, which
yeah,
so I think there's a lot we can look at Americans and be like, yeah, like if you want to feel confident and like you should like how you look because you have to live in it. So who
yeah,
cares?
yeah,
Or but at the same time, I love that we're not. I don't. I think Irish people are a little bit less selfish, a little bit less. They think more about people around them, and this is just
yeah,
in my experience.
yeah,
So yeah, and I've noticed that in the comedy community because comedy is like it's entertainment world. It's this weird. So it's a different. I'm experiencing a different America, but it's each to their own. Competitive. And so the Irish in me likes the like sense of community and like support
hmm,
people and bring people up. And when I meet comedians like that here, I love that. But there is a lot of pressure on them in the American Hollywood that it's you're the star. Like a lot of entitlement. You can make it. You can do it.
mm.
Um, Whereas, and also being Irish, you're told you'll never make it. So, like for me, every time I get something, I'm like, wow, how did I get that? So I'm not expecting it. I'm not disappointed when I don't get it. If I don't get something, I'm like, makes sense. Who did I think I was
Yeah,
applying? You know what I mean? So
yeah,
in a way, I'm luckier that I have that attitude where I have a lot of friends here who, when they don't get something, they feel very upset or they feel very entitled and like, I should have got it. I'm a star. And you're like, hey, nothing is guaranteed. So
yeah,
yeah, so
but
that's kind of nice.
right, right. And then, you talk about the comedy, the differences between Ireland and the US. And I suppose we can talk about, you talked about your internship and in the art and you didn't like it. And then what started your journey here then in comedy?
Well, all my friends at the time, and they're still my friends now. I just have a wider group of friends because of comedy. But this first group of friends are not comedians. They're all from South America, and I was working in this restaurant, and they were working there as well. And I would just be telling them stories, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're so funny. You should do stand up." But I think in Ireland, everybody is so funny. Everybody's so quick witted that it doesn't really stand out. But then when you're put into a different place and you're the storyteller, you're the funny one. And only because of that, and they told me to do comedy, then I started doing it. And then I just started reading books on what is a joke and how to tell a
Okay.
joke and did like multiple open mics. And I fell in love with it immediately. But I had never really watched comedy before, never thought I could do it. And it was just also, I had really bad anxiety when I was younger that I probably like didn't even know the word for it. But when I was in art college and moving to America, I decided if anything made me feel anxious, I should do it. And so when they were like, "Oh, you should do stand up," I was like, "Oh, that's so scary." But then I was like, "Oh, I should do it because, I'm in a different country. I can do whatever I want. Nobody knows me." And then that was it.
Okay, okay. And then did you, because starting off, I'm sure in comedy, I mean, I think about Mrs. Maisel. I mean, it's not easy, and you keep your job. So how did you support yourself?
Yeah, I was bartending and babysitting,
Okay.
kind of like so I'd bartend like 5 days a week. Luckily I gotten a daytime bartending job. There was like 2 years where I'd have to do nights, but I would do nights on like maybe days that I felt like I wouldn't have shows. But yeah, and I was babysitting the other days. So it was up until the pandemic, if it kind of felt like had just been working the whole time. But I'd been working since I was like 15 on like, you know, in different jobs while in school. And then in
Yeah.
college, I worked a full-time job while being in college full time. So it wasn't crazy to me to work full time, have another job, do
Okay.
comedy at night. But by the time the pandemic came and we finally got to rest, I was like, I'm exhausted. I was like, I need to make money off this comedy thing. So, yeah, I just started trying to figure out how to make money off it, how to get on the road, when things came back. And then I asked the comedy club that I work at, New York Comedy Club, could I do a special there? They said yes. So that meant then I could use that as an excuse to go on the road to like kind
Okay.
of places that didn't pay that well, but I could run the whole hour. And then so I taped my special. Most comedians wouldn't tape a special until they're already headlining. I taped my special
Okay.
before I was headlining and used it to get headlining. And it worked. It worked out. I put it on YouTube, and like I gotten loads of advice from older comics being like, you know, you should wait till you're 10 years in, or you should wait till you're already headlining a few years. And then I wanted to have no host, and I wanted to do a crowd work up top and then an hour of material. And they were like, that's crazy. Why break the wheel? But then I talked to women headliners and they were like, yeah, do it. Who cares? Men take themselves too seriously. And they were so supportive and so nice about it. And I did it. And then that special like blew up on YouTube. And then it meant I could tour and I could live off it. And that was really
Oh,
it. I just found a different way.
oh, brilliant. And do you think then COVID, Katie, was a good reset for you and to make you look at the comedy as a real job for you going forward?
Yeah, like I definitely looked at it as something as a real job as well that I would want to do. But COVID was a thing that gave me the time because before it was just open mics, shows, work. I never had the time to just think about it. And COVID gave
Okay.
me that first time to like actually be like, oh, this is a business and I need to make a strategy and actually live off this. So yeah, I mean, it was awful, the pandemic for the world.
Yeah, for sure.
Personal, personally, it really helped me to have a few months just to shut down and like before, because I feel very guilty with like taking time off and stuff like that. So it forced me to have time to like think and process everything. So for me personally, having the break for a few months really helped. And I still worked throughout the pandemic as a bartender, but it was only 2 days a week then.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay.
And that
But
was that was the Irish in me as well, which is like kind of silly, but loads of my American friends wouldn't go back to work, even though they didn't. They were like, "Oh no, I'm scared of COVID," and so the owner of the bar didn't have anybody, but they were getting a check, and they were like, "Why would I go back? I'm getting this check."
right.
But I'm too guilty. I was like, "Oh no, I'm like fine. I'm not scared of COVID. I'll go back." So I ended up
Okay.
making less money for all of COVID than
I
all of
know.
my friends, and they were like, "You're an idiot," and I was like, "Well, I don't know. I feel bad. He's Irish. We can't be doing that. We need to work." So then I
That
stood
Irish
in the cold.
that Irish Catholic guilt, Katie.
Yeah. It was really stupid. That's how the Brits took us over. You know what I mean? Like you know, doing the right thing always gets us screwed over.
Then will you talk to us a little bit, Katie, about, I suppose preparing for a show and for I mean, I'm curious to know, like, how does that all come together? Your material, or, when you're talking to someone, you're saying, oh, gee, that's good content, or how do you, like, where do you get your material?
Yeah, I kind of like. I guess yeah. It's usually if I'm talking to friends or family and I'm
Okay.
just chatting with them. Thankfully, they'll always be like, "Oh, have you done that on stage? That's a great bit. You should do that on straight stage. Write that down." And then I'll write it down. But or sometimes it's just going for a walk or even just being in the shower. I can't really sit down and write because then I'm
Okay.
like, it's like my brain doesn't work, but it'll work if I like I'm doing other things and then I'll be like, oh, that was something funny that happened, or that's weird, or it's like, or I'll see something and I'll be like, oh, that reminds me of something, and then I'll just go on stage and see if it's funny. And the pressure to make it funny in the moment is usually where I get the punchline or the joke. So it's kind of called like comedians would call it writing on stage. That's what I do. So I need loads of stage time. I need to get up and work ideas out with the audience, and that's really it. So yeah, not too complicated.
Okay. Okay. And how do you kind of, I suppose, manage the comedy, the content and I suppose in this PC world?
I don't even really think it's that PC. And in
Okay.
America, it's gone so the reverse that I was
Okay.
at this festival and there was comedians who were literally saying, if you can think of the worst slurs, they were saying that without a punchline. But it's just
Okay.
because now they think it's so like bold, and so I don't even think, and comedy is not PC. Like my audience that follow me would be liberal.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
I'm sure I'd have the odd person who's not liberal, but most people who would pay to see a woman for an hour talk are going to have liberal leniencies, as in they're more like,
Okay.
okay, and they like what I'm talking about. Usually what I talk about is more like, you know, like I'll have personal stuff, but it does lean on, like, I've talked about stuff as, you know, like rights as a woman and all of that.
Yeah.
When it comes to like woke, I've also said, you know, there was a woman who heckled me, and there's a video on my page where like I jokingly called her the C word, but because I'm playful and I come across as nice and good intentions, I can get away with it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of like, I'm not doing it nasty. I think
Okay.
there's such a difference between a joke that's clearly the comedian is annoyed and they're losing it and they say something mean, to playful, they've got this, they're just messing, it's all a bit of a laugh. If you're heckling, you're going to get called out. So but PC is like, there's nothing, like, I wouldn't want to make a joke where the butt of the joke is an immigrant who is struggling
Yeah.
here, who's, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
and I find the comics were like, oh, this PC culture can't write a joke anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Okay. Okay.
they'll literally be on stage and they'll complain. They'll be like, oh, the audience isn't laughing. And I'm like, yeah, because you just said something my grandfather with dementia could say for free. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? Like, you haven't wrote a great, and even PC, like liberal audiences, or like
Mm.
the ones that are usually like, oh, they're so PC. If you write a great joke and it's not PC, they'll be fine with it. They'll be like, but that's a good joke. Like, I've heard so many PC women, like feminist women, be like, oh, like men will be like, oh, but you like Bill Burr. And they're like, yeah, but that was a good joke. You know what I mean? His joke wasn't go, you know, like, yeah, like it's like, yeah, anyway,
Yeah.
that's my,
Okay.
that's my
Okay.
PC
Okay.
vent.
Oh yeah. No, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. And then you talk about like a good joke. Like what's a good joke?
Like, I think there's relatable, but also you didn't guess the reveal. So which is, I think, is really hard to do, because hack, which is what we say, is like, oh, like loads of comedians do it. Maybe the punchline has been done before, and that would usually be like, let's say if an Irish person was to do a famine joke, they might say, oh, that's hack because Irish people talk about the famine. But if they did it in a unique experience or a unique way that's relatable but no one's thought of before, then it's like, oh, well,
Okay.
that's an original. So for me, I think those are the best jokes. Something that you're like, or, you know, something you've kind of, when the comedian said it, you're like, I do think that way, but you didn't even realize before. So then you're kind of
Okay.
laughing. So for me, that's a good joke, but I don't know.
Well, it's working. It's working. And you talk about Katie, about women in the industry.
hmm
And I know you're very passionate about that. So do you want to kind of dissect that for us?
Yeah. Like, I 100% know it's harder for women in the industry. Like for me, and I have loads of reasons why, but it's definitely been like, for me, I had to get a special out. I had to do all this. I have to get all these followers. I have to do so much more than my male counterpoint, where I've had men that I know they're doing it way less than me, but because they get to open for bigger male comics, because they're only bringing men because it's cheaper, they can stay in the room with them. Then because they get to open in that venue, then they have a direct contact with the venue to be able to headline. Whereas I have to prove myself so much more. Like, I've got all these followers, I've got all these credits, I've done JFL, I've done Dotal, I have a special over 500,000. And then there'd be some other guy who just got in there because he got to open, and there's like, it's majority male headliners, so there's no room for
Okay.
women to come up. They have to work way harder than every woman on a show. It is only mostly one woman on a show. And when male comics, they sort of say, oh no, like, oh, this, you know, diversity is making it so more women are being on shows, which is not true. Most lineups I'm on, if it actually, the best comedy club is New York Comedy Club, because it is so diverse, but those comics just happen to be the best comedians.
Okay.
Like, it's so funny to me that, like, you'll hear complaints here like, oh, as a white man, I'm not getting booked as much, but it's not true, because a lot of the shows I do, if it's showcasing, it's like, there's just so many more men who happen to be white, so they are getting booked more. But then if you're the one woman on the audience or on the show, you're performing for your gender. So if six white men, if five of them bomb, they just need one to kill, because it's like, oh, well, oh, men are funny. 5 of them can bomb, and then you as the woman, you have to kill because you're the only woman, and you're defeating the stereotype that women aren't funny. So we have to be so tight, we have to be so strong,
Wow.
or all those people will walk away and be like, yeah, it's so awkward, yeah, it's so true, women aren't funny. So it's like so layered. And yeah, so and then I do feel like women and like men or women who aren't white or have some sort of like different to the norm, they do have to fight harder for their spot. And they also have less of an audience who'll come out to shows to see them in America.
Okay.
Because if you're looking at the percent, like I have a leg up. Like if all the Irish Americans came out to me, now they're not going to, but let's say if they all did, I'd have a leg up on someone else because that's 10% of America.
Okay. Oh yeah.
But like if you,
Yeah.
yeah, if you look at the percentage,
Yeah.
like if you're, yeah, but then you're looking at misogyny. Are all Irish Americans going to go and see a woman? Like where do they lean with that? And we're still trying to defeat that stereotype. So those are things. I headlined recently in this place, and this was in Europe. The headliner, the booker, and I'm obviously a professional comedian who has 2 specials on YouTube that have blown up and they do really well. And I've only stand-up clips online. So there's none of this. They can't say, oh, sometimes they'll dismiss other comedians who have a following because it's not stand-up that they're posting, which I think is unfair, but they can't do that to me because I post stand-up. I obviously work very hard to get to where I am, and the best
Oh.
comedy club in New York. Anyway, so I'm at this place in Europe, and the booker goes, I said, sorry, you didn't tell me and I'm headlining. I said, sorry, you didn't tell me how much time you want me to do. And he goes, well, 30 minutes. Don't do like only 15, which very disrespectful because obviously I have multiple hours.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, no, I just needed to know the time. Then he brought the mail opener up with at least 10 credits. Like it was so many credits, the mail opener was embarrassed when he was
Wow.
performing. He was like, oh, I'm not that good. And then when I was brought up, even though I'm the headliner, he just said, oh, this woman is from Ireland. Give it up for Katie Boyle. And so already you're seeing
Yeah. Yeah.
that. And, you know, I obviously like, you know, it was my fan base. I had a great time. And then he was much more respectful to me afterwards when he saw that I was actually like, you know, that I wiped the floor with him. But it's annoying. I shouldn't have to do that. You would not say that to a man. I did
Right.
another show where the guy was chasing me over a ginger ale. I'd just gotten off stage. I'd just done an hour and a half. And he was like, you owe money for a ginger ale, which is fucking crazy, but also would not do that to the man. So I'm constantly having this, would you say this to a man? Would you say this to a man? And they just wouldn't. Or like, oh, as a woman, you have to be so nice and friendly to everybody as well. Like the men comedians come into the green room, they're like writing on their notes, they're whatever. They're like, which they should be. They shouldn't have to. If I walk in and I'm not smiling at everybody, I've one little boy messaging me afterwards going, you didn't smile at me. Do you hate me? Katie hates me. And I'm like, oh my God, as a woman, we don't have to smile at you. We don't have to be nice.
Yeah.
Like I'm here to work. But yeah, so I'm constantly like, oh, if I were a man.
So there's a real divide in the in the industry. And do you think that like the general public realizes that? Because, you know, we're hearing now that, you know, women, we're making, you know, so much progress and we're empowered, but you know, people don't talk about your industry, Katie.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think that there's even women out there who don't realize that they also believe the stereotype that women aren't funny,
Okay.
and they're also coming to terms with that. I think social media has been great though. Social media is showing women stand-ups, they're getting women pushed to them, and I think it is all changing where we're getting like I did a show for all women recently in Ireland, and it was the best audience I could have. They were so supportive, and women are so supportive of each other. The only reason why I am where I am is because women pulled me up. Women gave me the
Right.
contacts. Women helped me. Women booked me. Like the bookers at New York Comedy Club are women. Like the owner's a man, but the bookers are women. And he's also so nice. He's always like trying to like, you know, make sure the women feel all like, but anyway, point being is that it was women. And then there's this, I did a Irish radio show, and he was, the guy was like, oh, and it must be hard being a woman because women hate each other. So they're probably always putting each other down. And I was like, no, the only reason why I am in my career is because other women, and they weren't like secretive about their contacts, or they're all like girls pull each other up. Look at like I'm in multiple girls, an Irish girls WhatsApp group for comedians, an American one, and there's so little of us, but we speak each other's names in rooms. Like I bring women to open for me, you know, as much as I can. Sometimes I'm in Ireland. Yeah, but yeah, I feel like it will change, but we just have to keep sticking with each other and calling it out when we can, which I do. Like I'll be
Yeah,
like,
no,
yeah,
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
be like, you owe me
yeah.
money. Like I've sat in a comedy club for 2 hours because they tried to give me 2 grand
Yeah.
less, and they kept going, oh no, it's a typo, it's
Oh,
this, and the whole time I was like,
yeah.
they wouldn't do this to a man, they wouldn't do this to a
Oh,
man, but that's fine. And it was a snowstorm, and I was like, dude,
wow.
that's fine.
Mm,
I'll just wait. You go check. And I waited for 2 hours until they paid me the right money.
wow.
But
And Katie, is that the stat with the? Actually that's a good question for me. Is that like the norm? Yeah. So talk about, I suppose, the pay, the pay structure. You know, male versus female in the industry.
yeah, so it is definitely the wild wild west.
Okay. Okay.
Like everything is different. You know, good comedy clubs will have, like, the best comedy clubs will say 80% door deal after
I
expenses,
said, yeah.
but it really depends. And some places are being bought up by like a big ticketing service right now, and so they're changing the deals and making it way harder to make money, which is annoying because I don't think the audience don't realize we don't get a percentage of the ticket fee, and now
No.
we're not getting a
Yeah.
percentage. We don't get a percentage. We're
Mm,
getting a worse percentage of face value.
yeah.
um but I do think there's things that maybe women have to deal more with. Like a lot of my woman friends have left without getting paid and then
Oh,
had to fight for their pay, which just wouldn't happen with the men.
mm, yeah.
And that's why I always think, okay, would a man stay, he'd ask. And I try to think, what would a man
Yeah.
do? Um, but yeah, so there's like loads of
Mm,
women. Like I'm still not paid from a comedy club that was bought by another place. They didn't pay my opener properly. And when I was like talking to them about it, and I was like, no, you have to pay the opener. Like you have a budget for it, comes out of my expenses. He was like, if you're gonna be this way, like, and he kind of was implying like I was being crazy for talking about money. Like they do this, you know what I mean? And they're playing up to those stereotypes. And
yeah.
no, my voice is very calm. You just have to
Yeah.
pay.
Yeah.
And they never paid. And then they sold, like I paid her myself out of my own money, but again, that wouldn't happen to a man.
Yeah.
And I text my male friends and they're like, no, they're paying my opener, it's
Yeah.
fine. And so, or oh no, I got a bonus for that show. So I'll be like, and I'll be like, you shouldn't be giving bonuses just to the men, especially when I have more followers and more credits. But
Mm,
I'll do that, and it is annoying because then I'm like the martyr or the pain in the hole. But it's like if I don't say it, then the next woman, they'll use me. They'll be like, well, Katie didn't mind. Well, Katie didn't. Do you know, this
yeah.
sort of way? So that's it's just that if they could play off kind of, yeah, it's what is the word for it? There is like a bias or a they just see women as a little bit less than, and it depends on who you're working with. If you're working with woman bookers, it's a different story.
Yeah.
In my
Yeah.
experience, I think they're great, and then there is some clubs that are great as well. There's also like sexual stuff. Like I worked for a club that the guy was like, the manager was really inappropriate. I was just there for a weekend, but I just left it off, ignored it. He drove in his car when we were walking home to the hotel trying to get us to go out with him, and he was like very overtly flirty and inappropriate. But it was like fine. I was like, do you know what? It's fine. Like I don't drink. It's not fine for other people. It's fine for me because I'm old enough and I don't drink when I'm there and I can
Hmm.
clock it and I can kind of
Yeah.
push it away. I
Oh,
didn't hold it against him, but when I went back the next year, he was really rude to me. And he was horrible to me the whole weekend because his ego had been bruised. But it's like, wait. What you did, if we were in a regular job, would be a HR issue. And you're
right.
lucky that I didn't, tell the owners about it or whatever. I kind of went, you know what, like, I'll just be very clear and maybe that'll give him you can't be doing this with. But yeah, it's just, but then when I went back and he was like, I will never work that club again. And that's fine. I'll just go somewhere else.
Oh,
But there's other women who'll feel like they can't go somewhere else. They'll feel like, oh, well, I have to do it. I have to put up with this
mm,
because it's a abuse of power.
uh-huh.
Whereas I'm like, I'm doing it long enough that I know I'll rent out a field if I have to, if I don't have to
Right.
deal with these weirdos. But that's the stuff you're dealing with. So it's constantly mental gymnastics, and it's such a small a thin line, because if I did say something to the owners, he could have been like, she's crazy, she was flirting with me. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like it's like
right.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, or like
Yeah.
they could try to like blacklist you.
Oh,
But so it's yeah,
yeah.
it's complicated, but I
Yeah, for
love it.
sure.
I love
Yeah,
it because
no,
I
well,
love my job.
you seem to well, definitely thrive on the comedy, but I mean, it's tough, and I don't know if you have to worry about your show and your content, but then all the behind the scenes. I mean, it's tough. But I suppose, Katie, you have to think you are making it better for the next generation coming along, and then so you have to think. Like, I mean, yes, it's tough going, but you're doing great work.
Hopefully, and I'm sure
Yes.
there's more I could do,
Yeah.
but hopefully the
Yeah.
next generation will be more clued into that
Yeah.
stuff and they'll do it better.
Yeah. 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 And all righty. So listen, let's talk a little bit now about your great podcast.
Thanks. I haven't
Yeah.
recorded an episode in so long. I'm
But
really
that's okay.
bad
But
at
I mean, it
yeah.
was,
Well, I have 2 episodes that I recorded last year that I still need to
yes.
put out, but so it's been on a little hiatus, but
It's,
it will eventually come back.
yeah.
But yeah, it started with Des Bishop, I think like 8 years ago or maybe not. I can't remember. It was a long time
Mm.
ago, but and then I took it over just myself in the pandemic, and then the last year I've kind of been not really doing it as much, but I should get back into it. I think I just need a different sort of angle with it because we've kind of covered everything: mental health, relationship, sex, and dating. So I'll have a
Mm.
fresh mind maybe in a few
Yeah.
weeks and be able to think of
Yes.
it's more really the chats now at this point, just with comedians.
Right. Okay. And then I think one of the uh, things I think if I read about the podcast was you talk about the differences between Ireland and the US in, in the dating world and even, talking about sex.
Yeah, like I think um New York and I think Boston's the same are very different to growing up in Ireland. And even just how they talk about sex and how confident and comfortable they are, and how the confidence with the women is great. Like they know what they like. They're not gonna be faking anything. Do you know, Irish women are we're like the new generation are better, but up until mine and the previous generations were told, just kind of, we're people pleasers. We're like a land of people pleasers, and then we don't talk about sex, so no one really knows what they're doing. Like if a man was to ask, "What do you like?" You'd be like, "Fuck, I don't know. What do you mean? What do I like?" Whereas the American women are like, "I know what I like, and this is how you're going to do it, and you're doing it wrong." And like they're just like amazing. So I find them really inspiring. But they definitely helped me a lot, and like just openly talking about things that I would have never heard those conversations out loud if it was female masturbation or toys or their kinks. And yeah, thankfully I've gotten to meet all these amazing people and through the podcast and through comedy, just who have found what they like, who they are,
Mm.
and not don't feel any shame with it. And for me, coming here, like I didn't end up, I didn't change much in regards to like I'm still monogamous. I still like very vanilla sex, but I enjoy it and I know what I like and I'm comfortable saying I don't like that or this is what I need. So even just like you can't really enjoy the vanilla aspect if you have shame and you don't know your body. So whereas that is nearly not vanilla to my generation. That's like, whoa, you're so kinky. But yeah, so a lot of that we had people on the podcast, one woman who worked in like a sex dungeon, other women who, or even men, even we had men on, I'd men on who were talking about like sort of like ED or whatever and how
Mm.
normal that is and like how women kind of react in a way of thinking it's like, oh, you're not attracted to me, but really it's just like a common thing that men go through. And so those were like really fun like chats to have and to learn about and just sort of make everything normal. Like I think, I was in Stockholm and they do baths where they're like in their towels, but then I heard in Finland they go in completely naked.
Yeah.
And I thought that was great. Because imagine if we all just had these like public bathhouse where we go
Yeah.
naked and like your bits aren't then
Yeah.
sexualized.
Yeah.
It's like I think it actually makes it safer because then
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, a boob fell out. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? It just normalizes bodies
Yeah.
and they don't need to be,
Mm.
they can be sexy in the context of you're with your partner, you're in a
Mm.
candlelit room, whatever. But like just walking around, they should be just bodies. So
Right.
I thought
Right.
that was really cool.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
New Yorkers, they're kind of more like that. They're like, yeah, who cares? Like who, they're more about like just no shame, which is lovely.
Right. Right. But I think it goes back to what you were talking at the beginning, and indeed all through this conversation, Katie. It's really the difference between Ireland and the US, and we've been able to be more open here. And I know the Gen Zs now are getting there too. But I mean, when we were growing up in Ireland, you didn't talk about sex.
No,
I
and it
mean,
made us so at risk. Like
right.
I talk about in my show, sort of how I thought plan B, like I was always like, firstly we didn't really have it, but we were always told like that's the miracle if you need it. And then I learned late in life that it does not. I learned at 34 it doesn't work if you're ovulating. I didn't even know when you're ovulating. Like they didn't teach us about your body, about period, about sex. And they think by not teaching us, they're protecting us, and really they're just embarrassed themselves and they don't know. But actually they're putting us at risk, because then we're entering into risky behavior, not knowing, thinking we're safe. Like, oh, well, okay, I took the plan B, I'm fine. No. Or, yeah, so, and it's the same with like heavily Christian areas in the States. I think those heavy religious areas, old Ireland, actually, if you just give teenagers the information and make it normal, they're less likely to kind of be like taboo. Oh, let's do this, let's risk. But at least if they do it, they know, okay, I need to use a condom, or I need to be on the pill, or the pill isn't going to work. Like this isn't this miracle savior, that's going to protect you. So yeah, I hate that I'm like, I'll probably only fully know my body and then I'll be going through the menopause, and sure, they don't fucking tell us about that. Like, what is
Well,
that?
no, we're talking about it a lot more now. We're
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Please do. So
yes,
that when I come around, I'm not
yeah.
terrified.
I know, but I mean, that was another taboo subject until like very recently too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like every other generation of women before mine should get like an apology letter from like the world, because
From
like
who? Oh, the world. Okay.
the world, because like they just really kind of were like, no, you should just be in pain, and no, you're
God.
just, yeah. I do think Ireland as well, before Catholicism, I can't even say our own religion even though I'm not religious, but before it became Catholic and it was pagan, it does have a history of being more sex positive. The words in the Irish language, like there's so many more words for your like vagina or your vulva or penis or all of this stuff, uh, than in the English language. And I think it was that kind of being occupied by England and their kind of stiff upper, like I think that
Oh,
was
that
actually,
stiff upper lip. Yeah.
yeah. And then becoming Catholic. And for any of the American listeners, the Irish only became Catholic as a, well, well, no, that's not true, because we became Catholic before Protestant, but then we stuck with it. I feel like we went more hardcore because that was also a way to separate yourself from being English. But yeah, like the Irish before Catholicism and British rule seemed to be more open with sex, and the rules and Brehon laws seemed to be more like, it was still obviously patriarchy, but it was like way more less patriarchy and more rules for women, and they could divorce and they had a bit more rights. Um so yeah, so it's funny, like where we see Irish identity as Catholic, but it's not. That's only a part of us. We had this whole identity before, and I think Gen Z are really starting to look into that, like the language. Let's learn the language.
Yeah.
Let's talk about folklore. Let's get back to this, and I think that'll be really good because yeah, for Christian America, don't do what Ireland did. All you need to do is read one Irish history book about Catholic Ireland, and nobody won. Okay, the men were traumatized, the women were traumatized. We're still having to do so much work to undo it, and yeah, I will never ever accept church and state. You can have your church, you can have your state. You don't like have your mistress with your wife in the house. No, okay, you keep them separate. So I don't know if that's a good analogy, but yeah, church and state never. And Ireland should be the textbook for every country that thinks church and state, or any religion and state. It doesn't work. Anyway, they won't listen. They're not going to listen to
Well,
this. They're going to hear me and go, no, bye.
no. Well, I guess keep talking about it, and you talk about the Irish language, and I know you're doing a show very soon around St.
Yeah.
Patrick's, and I mean and you can tell us a little bit about that. But we see there's a real revival of the language.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I'm doing it with Vivian
Mm.
O'Callaghan. So
Yeah,
she's
we had
Vivian.
Vivian. She was our very
Oh, you
first
had her.
guest. Yeah, when we launched our
Oh,
podcast, Vivian was our very first guest to kick it off.
she's
Yeah,
amazing.
she's
Yeah, so we did it last year, and she's not doing it this year in New York. She's going to do it with me in Kansas City. So in New York,
okay,
I'll do it myself. But there
okay,
is
okay.
a comedian from Ireland, and she was brought up speaking Irish. So she's going to come over and she'll do the Irish element a bit with me. And because I don't speak Irish well, I speak it very, very badly. But obviously Vivian is fluent, and then
Mm.
this other girl who's coming for the New York show, she's fluent, and she does a lot of Irish folk songs, and she does comedy. So that'll be great. But I kind of just ask questions about it, and my interest in the Irish languages is how it really shows our Irish identity a bit better. And I think it suits Irish people better, the language, like that emotions are on you, not identifying as them. I think that's a much better way to talk about emotions. How the beautiful the words are. And, you know, we need to look at Ireland. It's a land of writers and poets. But
Mm.
that comes from the Irish language, like how we describe a jellyfish as a seal snot. You know, that translates back as like it didn't have it wasn't it, so it was like, oh, that's a snail snot. Like I
Yeah.
love that words were nearly like is it like similes or something, like you know, like a fox is like a red dog or stuff like that. So I talk to them about that, and they talk a bit more about it. And then I love Irish history, so I talk about Irish history, and I love folklore. I talk about Irish folklore, and I have jokes about both Irish history and folklore, and then have different comedians on, and hopefully I've asked dancers to come. So I have to double check that they're actually coming. But yeah, they should be coming because there was two that reached out to me, but the first
Okay.
one is like a bunch of kids. So they'd come do it early and then they can
Yeah.
leave. So they
Yeah.
won't be there for any of their inappropriate jokes if any come up. But that should be lovely to see
Yeah.
little Irish. That's what I
Yes.
love about Irish Americans.
Mm.
Irish Americans, the ones there's like two what I see, two types of Irish Americans. There's the ones that really, really, really wanted to, you know, become white and be in American culture, which is totally understandable. They were, you know, sort of their ancestors were treated so badly, and then they got this chance to be equal. And, you know, and then they've excelled in America, but they've forgotten where they came from. But then there's the Irish Americans who never forget. They have their kids speaking Irish, doing Irish dances. They're more Irish than me. When I talk to them, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not, they should take my Irish passport because and it's so lovely to see. And it's
Yeah.
great for Irish people when we come over because they kind of inspire us. Like we'll go to these events and you're like, oh my God, everybody can speak Irish. And then they switch over and they have an American accent or yeah, I love that. So those Irish Americans are so great because they really have, you can go to a different country and keep your culture and
Oh,
embrace
yeah.
the new culture.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
same with immigrants coming to Ireland. Like, oh, Irish people are so like a very small minority are terrified of immigrants coming to Ireland, but they bring lovely aspects of their
Yeah.
culture. They get to embrace ours. And I love that. And I love that about New York, meeting all these people. Anyway, but yeah, so Irish Americans that keep it up, it's amazing.
Great. Yeah. And as you said, you know, never forget where you come from, Katie. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, and the Irish
Yeah.
are a success
Yeah,
story.
for sure.
Survived genocide,
Mm.
survived penal camps in Australia. Like wherever they went, they had to overcome
Mm.
something. And yeah, I just think the Irish that remember that are usually the most empathetic, and yeah.
Okay. And then, Katie, how do you think you have changed over the years with the comedy and living in the US? Like,
Um, Definitely comedy wise, like how has my comedy
well, I mean,
changed?
I guess though the Katie that arrived in the US to the Katie now, like, I mean, how do you think you have changed? Because I mean, I think people do change. You know, you move out here, whatever, you're here, whatever. You know, I think I always say I feel you do change.
Oh, I changed 100%.
Yeah.
So, like, I felt at home. You couldn't really be direct. We're not really raised to be direct. And
Mm.
you're raised to be like, oh, no, no, thank you. No, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. Whereas here in New York, it's like, spit it out. Like, don't waste my time. Tell me what you need. And I actually like that. I like a more direct approach. And I would be the same. Whereas, like, you know, oh, do you want a cup of tea? Yes, thank you.
No.
Or no, thank you. And I
Yeah.
mean it. And it's kind of annoying then when people pressure you and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, you forget because that doesn't happen in New York. If you say no, they're like, okay.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Or
if you
to
don't,
take,
yeah,
yeah.
you'll
Or to take,
starve if you say no and you really want
yeah.
the food.
Yeah. I used to have a joke where I'd be like, oh, I'd walk into an American's house and they'd be like, would you like a glass of water? I'd be like, no, thanks. And then they let you die of thirst in the corner. But it's a good way to be in that regards of like, they respect. Because if you think about it, like I thought about it, how it links to consent. So if we're told in Ireland, let's say like, oh no, I'm okay, and oh no, go on, like that, we should pressure people that we know what
Oh,
they want,
okay, okay.
and it can work in like the bad way. If someone says, no, I don't want to drink, and you're trying to be nice, and like, no, no, I'll get you one, I'll get you one. But then you're pressuring them into drinking, or you're maybe
Hmm.
pressuring them into like
Okay.
kissing you or whatever.
Right, right.
So I kind of like that here. If someone's like, oh, I'm going to get a drink, do you want one? And I go, no, I'm good. They'll just leave it because like,
Yeah.
maybe I don't want to drink. Maybe I don't want to have to explain why I'm not
Yeah.
drinking. And so, yeah, I think that also, like, I went to therapy, so I'm not as much as a head wreck as I used to be. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I think back and I look back at like all the men I dated, all the like things that were upsetting me, all the things that I don't know, yeah, just made my life
Yeah.
harder. And I'm sure people around me, because like you don't want to see your friend constantly dating psychos. Like at some point I was choosing them, but then I go to therapy, you work out your childhood trauma, and then you're fine. You know, I'm not like fully healed, but I'm so happy that I came to America, went to therapy, learned what my issues are and how to like work on them and just be a better like be better for myself, but also to be
Mhm.
around, you know. So and stop me drinking all the time. Like you can't be drinking from when you're 13 until you're like in your 30s constantly. Yes, that is
No.
an alcohol problem.
But I mean, yeah, that is one of the very positive things about, being in the US, that you can be yourself, and, the Americans are not afraid to talk about their problems.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Irish people, in fairness to them, like what Americans taught me, if you are confidently whatever you are, you know, like that's great. In Ireland, if you are that too, that's great as well. You just have to not care, people, because if
Right.
people do talk about you or they think it's weird, like someone reached out to me a few years ago and said that someone from my hometown was down at the pub being like, who does she think she is being a comedian? But I just laughed at it because I've been in
Yeah.
America where they don't mind if
No.
people think bad about, because they're like, I don't care, I'm happy. And instead of me being like upset that someone was upset that I was like, I'm not upset that he's a plumber.
No,
Like
no, no.
I think that's so impressive. I could never be a plumber. Anytime my toilet even looks like it's about to act up, I'm like, oh my god. Like for me that's such a like I just could not, any other job I'm impressed by, because I could not do it. I could only do comedy. But I would never be like, why did he go to trade school? Why is he doing this? Who does he think he is? But it's just like with comedy, because it's more like you're putting yourself out there, people are going to have an issue with it, but that just comes from their own insecurity, or maybe they want to do it and they never left or
Yeah.
whatever. But
Yeah,
it's
there
a
could be,
nice way to look at things.
for sure. Yeah, there could be any number of reasons. Katie, I know you were in Boston last year. I think, was it October last year? You did
I
a
think
show
so,
on.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm just curious. And of course, I loved your road trip to Boston.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. But I'm just curious, that what was the Boston audience like, would say, compared to New York?
Yeah, I think they're amazing. I think New
Okay.
York's amazing too.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think Boston, New York, and Chicago, and DC are probably so far my favorite places to perform.
Okay.
Um, but I mean, kind of everywhere I go in the States, I have a really good time. Like if people are coming out to see me, they're on my wavelength. So but yeah, the Boston audience was really fun. And Irish audiences are very like talkative, like in a good way, not in a bad way, but they'll kind of like interact with your joke, or they'll be like kind of agreeing along with you as if you're having a conversation with them, which I really like. And I did find that Boston was a little like that. Like it was kind of
Okay.
fun. Like they
Good.
definitely had that bit of the Irish fun chattiness, vocal. And I like I honestly don't mind if someone shouts something up if it's not like to be mean and they're just having
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of, and Irish people do that a lot. But yeah, no, I loved Boston, loved New York, loved Chicago.
Great. Good. And then what's on the cards for the rest of this year, tour wise? What do you tell us, what you've coming up?
So I have Emmaus this weekend on Saturday, the 28th, and then I go to Portland, Seattle, Minneapolis, then Pittsburgh, Chicago, then back to New York for the Irish night, and that's on St. Patrick's Day, and then San Diego, Las Vegas, Bakersfield, Pasadena, which I think is by LA,
Oh,
so I think LA, and then I think I'm back then, and I know I have Austin, Plano, uh
yeah.
Chandler, Arizona,
Good.
a bunch of
That's
places, but it's all on my website.
Wow. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So that's a busy year for you.
Yeah, well, it was the same last year. The kind
Okay.
of March, April, May are usually my busiest, and then
Okay.
I go to Ireland for the summer and do
Oh,
Europe, and then
okay.
October, November, December are my busiest. So right now I'm kind of like between the two, like based in New York, but also based in Ireland, using Ireland as a base for Europe, which is
Okay.
great. I'm glad to get at that point.
Okay, good. And then before we wrap up, like, how do you unwind, Katie? Or, I mean, relax. You can't stay cranked up, like,
Yeah.
and high energy 24/7. So how do you take care of yourself?
I just binge watch TV shows, watching Traders right now. So
Okay.
loving Maura Higgins.
Yeah, yeah,
She's my
yeah,
favorite.
yeah. That was a
Um,
great show.
yes, that's
Yeah.
really it. I just binge watch
Okay.
TV shows or go out with friends. Like we'll
Okay.
do like karaoke or I'm a
Yeah.
terrible singer.
Okay.
But yeah, just seeing friends. So
Yeah.
that really kind of basic stuff.
Okay. Oh, wait, can I just ask you actually one other question about friends? I hear a lot of the young people here that, either come over on the J1 visa or that have been here a couple of years. They find it hard to kind of, make friends, and they say it takes almost, a year or so. I mean, did you find that, or did the comedy kind of make it easier for you?
Yeah, before I did comedy, I was here for I think like 6 or 7 months.
Okay.
I made friends pretty much like pretty quickly, but I purposely, and this is not to say anything bad about Irish people, I just didn't want to come over and go straight out to the Irish events and only meet Irish people.
Hmm.
I very much wanted to meet people from different walks of life.
Okay.
And that just kind of worked out. Like my
Yeah.
first friend group, who are still some of my closest
Oh,
friends, are from South America,
yeah.
and we just were working at a restaurant together. I do think like those type of jobs, I would suggest to anybody coming over. It's hard for people who are coming over though. Now it's really tricky with your internship. You have to be within that place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did not find it easy to become friends with the people in the internship because we were just a very different walk of life. But like restaurant bar work, it's people who want to go out for drinks, they want to have fun. And anybody from like Central or South America are just the best crap. I would automatically tell Irish people, even if you want to go to the Irish friends, go to a Latin event, okay? And just be like,
Yeah.
please, can I come in? They love Irish people. They're
Yeah.
so nice and they're going through the same, like, they're immigrants, they're going through the same
Yeah.
thing. And then when I started comedy, I just immediately made friends with all of the other immigrants. So as it turns out, all of my friends here are immigrants. I'm trying to think, do I have any American friends? A very small amount. All of my best friends when we go out, one is first generation Pakistani, but the rest are all immigrant comedians or
Okay.
my immigrant bar friends. Yeah, I think get a job in a bar. That's my advice. Or do comedy,
Okay.
do open mics,
Okay.
or go to a film, go to like I have two Irish friends I made from a running club, and I made them because we did a running club. I don't want to run. I just wanted to make friends in the
Yeah.
pandemic, and then uh, but they also did a film club, even though they've like serious like full-time careers that would never mean they were going to be film people. They're very talented at it, and they just did it as
Mm.
a hobby. So like
Yeah.
they made friends through that. So I
Yeah.
think yeah, just putting yourself out there in
Yeah.
these fun events.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Well, Katie, this has been so much fun, and we
Thanks.
wish you continued success and keep up what you're doing. You're fabulous. Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much. Have a great day. Thanks for having me.